Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, as part of our Elements of Handicapping series, today we're going to be focusing on class. That's part 2 of the 4 elements of form, class, speed, and pace. So without further ado, let's take a look. Okay, part 2 is class. It's an assessment of whether or not each contender rightly belongs in the Kentucky Derby from a competitive standpoint. An analysis of pedigree and family history in conjunction with track results will help determine their qualification for our usage. So that's what we're going to be looking at, is just the building blocks for each horse to see if they belong. Number 1 is Forte. You see he's by Violence, and Medaglia d'Oro is the grandsire. Queen Caroline and Blame underneath. That's 2-turn pedigree all day. He is from the 1X female family. That's the La Troyenne branch of female family number 1. Qualified by the numbers of how many stakes wins each family produced. So that was done in England early on. So number 1 is as good as you can get. When you talk about pedigree, a lot of times they'll say, let's see how much secretariat we can get in a horse. And as far as the dam goes in the female family and just in general pedigree, a lot of times they'll say, we don't have enough La Troyenne, let's get some more. That's how classy this is. So from that perspective, Forte is one of the classiest horses in this race, and he definitely qualifies. Just to give you an idea of some of these numbers, the genetic strength value score is looking at a horse from all the chefs de race in their pedigree and all the influences, and they assign them point values, and they arrive at a number to give you an idea of how strong the horse's pedigree is. The problem is that because they have not been adding new chefs to race, the guy who used to keep track of it is gone now. So we don't know. The number doesn't reflect a lot of the newer great sires like Curlin or Into Mischief, people like that, horses like that. So the number is not as accurate as it should be. To give you an example, Hard Spun, one of my favorite horses, had the highest genetic strength value in 2007, and he was at like 78. That's an extremely high genetic strength value score. 52 would be on the low side if it was an accurate number. Also, the longer a sire is a chef de race, the more points he gets. So a lot of times if a horse is coming from a newer sire, the genetic strength value score might be a little low. So you have to account for that when going in. I put it on here because I know a lot of you pedigree guys like to see these numbers, but I thought it was worth showing you. It does give you a little idea of the class of the horse when you compare the number with the rest of the field. But it's not as accurate as it ought to be, and hopefully somebody is going to pick up the slack and give us qualify some new chefs to race, because we can really use it. It would really be a big help. Same thing with the dosage index. Because we don't have new chefs to race, it's not exactly an accurate number. So a lot of influences aren't included that would rightfully be there. So the dosage index, the old rule used to be if you got over 3 that you probably couldn't get the 1.25 miles. But nowadays, because the lack of chefs to race, it's not exactly an accurate number. So you see Forte here at 3. And that means he qualifies, but again, you're going to see a couple of them where the dosage index is going to be a little out of whack, and you're going to go, well, how can he get 1.25 miles? Well, that's why. It's not exactly an accurate number. But again, I know you guys wanted to see it, so I thought I'd just give it to you and explain. The center of distribution, 1 would be a balanced pedigree. So anything under 1 means they can run all day. Anything over that, they tend a little bit towards speed. So you can see if you take those numbers, again, not being completely accurate, you'd see that Forte would qualify. The average winning distance is Violence is 6.7. That would kind of give you a little bit of a pause, except he's a fairly new sire, and that is only based upon the samplings of his get so far. As they go along, that will increase once they find the sweet spot. Most of the time it does, I should say. And he's by Medaglia d'Oro. He can run all day, so we're not going to worry about that. And Queen Caroline by Blame, that's 2-turn pedigree all day. So Forte is definitely qualified to be in this race from that standpoint. He gets an A. Mike Rapoli and St. Elias Stables, first-class outfit, been around for a long time. Todd Pletcher needs no introduction, and Gerard Ortiz, the leading rider. What more do you need? He gets an A. Angel of Empire is by a fairly new sire, Classic Empire. who factored in the Preakness and Derby and the Triple Crown Trail. And he's got Harmony's Angel underneath by To Honor and Serve. And To Honor and Serve was on the Derby Trail, and he was more of a distance type of horse. Don't know that he had a whole lot of top end, more of a grinder. So again, these are two sires that are fairly new. Pioneer in the Nile, of course, is a great sire to American Pharaoh. So though you look at those average winning distances, and it shouldn't give you too much pause because they're likely going to go up the greater the sample is. Again, the dosage index at 9, that's completely inaccurate. And of course, we know this based upon the performance we've seen of Angel Empire so far. He loves 2 turns. He's going to relish more ground, so we don't worry about that. Brad Cox is training, Flavian Pratt is riding, and Albaugh Family Stables. Those are A connections. So Angel of Empire is completely qualified to be in this race. He gets an A. Tappet Trice is another A level. He's by Tappet. Dunkirk underneath. For those of you who don't know, Dunkirk was trained by Todd Pletcher. Got a little late on the Derby Trail. He was a late running closer. Distance was not something we ever worried about with him. What it was whether or not he could get there in time. So the pedigree's there. That's not going to be a problem at all. You see the GSV is pretty good in comparison to the rest of the field. So he's got some good class. The connections, Whispering Hill Farm, Todd Pletcher, Luis Saez. He couldn't have asked for a better jockey right now than Luis Saez. He really knows how to manage this horse, and I'm sure he's awful tired when he's done with the races, but this one's certainly qualified. He gets an A. Dermot Sotogake is, I know we have a lot of questions about this one, and I tried to do a little digging, and the first thing to know is Mind Your Biscuits, his sire, and his grandsire Posse, that says speed on its face. But remember, Mind Your Biscuits won a 1 1/8 race. So he was pretty versatile. It's just sprints were what he was better at. I think that he might have had some other issues why he didn't run 2 turns a little more. But if you look at his average winning distance is 7.9, I mean, that's a mile. So basically he's getting 2-turn horses who can run more than that. And look on the bottom, he's got 8.6 at average winning distance. By Neo Universe. So there's 2-turn pedigree here. We're not going to worry about that. He's going to get the distance. Just the question is whether or not he's going to qualify speed-wise. I think there's every indication that he belongs in this race. He gets a B only because it's Japan. We're not overly certain, and that's the only reason why. But I'm pretty sure that he's good. He's qualified to be in this race, and that's what class is just to say, is he qualified? Got Christophe Lemaire on, ran this race last year with Crown Pride, I believe, and I think he got a little carried away with the speed element of racing to give us that suicide pace. I'm sure he's learned from the experience, and I don't think we're going to see this one bolt to the front and try to wire the field with superstar fraction. So I think this one belongs. Practical Move is by Practical Joke. We know, that's the big issue. He gets sprinters. There's no way around it. It's just what has been. He's a fairly new sire. That's true. And this one has Act Naughty by A Fleet Alex. A Fleet Alex could run all day long. They used to gallop him 2 miles every single day just to keep him happy. So we're not going to worry about the stamina from the dam's perspective. But as we know, you get the class from the dam, you get the talent from the sire. So this one might be very classy, and his pedigree might say maybe a mile. So he could stretch it to 1 1/8, let's say, on class. But once you start getting a little farther from that, that's when reality sets in. So we want to be thinking about it from those terms. Female family 2F, that's a really solid high-end female family. So I think this horse is a pretty classy horse, and he also has talent, and that might carry him a little farther than he actually wants to go. We did, we know what happened to the San Diego Derby, what we all saw. So maybe that's kind of what we're getting at. So he may be hitting the ceiling. He may have hit the wall with 1 1/8. Just not sure yet, but he's classy enough that I think he belongs in this race. Whether or not it's going to suit him completely, not really sure, but that's why he gets a B-. Two Phils is kind of the same thing. He's by Hardspun. Hardspun was very classy, and he was second in the Derby, third in the Preakness, and fourth in the Belmont. And really, the horse only wanted a mile and an eighth. That was the max distance, but he was so classy, he was able to outrun that. So this one is, you keep that in mind with Two Phils, and it looks to me like a mile and an eighth might be about as far as this one wants on dirt. Synthetic, maybe he can carry it a little longer because of the way you run on it. But the dam is General Quarters. General Quarters was a horse in the Derby Trail, and distance wasn't the issue with him. It just was class and speed were a little light. So just Two Phils, Larry Ravelli's a great trainer. He's been on the Midwest for years, and Jareth Loveberry's been a jockey in the Midwest for a long time. That's not an issue. He's going to be. He's got good connections, but gets a B- because just not quite sure that he is that he belongs in this race because I think he's a hair below the better horses in this race. So I think he's done enough to qualify for sure, but I don't know. I think it might be asking a little much of this one to get a mile and a quarter. Hit Show is by Candy Ride and Tap It Underneath. No problem, right? That should do it. He's a May foal. Very interesting to note. That means he hasn't turned 3 years old yet, so there's still some growth, and you always love to see that when a horse who's behind growth-wise in the rest of the field is performing at this level. So keep that in mind, is that this horse definitely has more upside as he continues to grow. He's from the A1 female family. That means... as I told you, if you didn't know, in Europe, they numbered all the stakes winnings, the female families by stakes winners. And in America, they did the same thing. They just put a letter A in front of them. So it's A1 is the top American stakes winning female family. So that's pretty good class there. I think the pedigree tells me he's not going to have a problem with a mile and a quarter. And the fact that he ran in New York and his results were a little suspect, because of the quality he was running against. That's why he gets a B+. But I think Hit Show from this standpoint belongs in the race. Kings Barnes is not. We're not going to worry about stamina with this one. Uncle Mo on top. Lady Tappet underneath. Lady Tappet was a hell of a horse. And you see that the average winning distances, that stamina is not the issue. We don't know who the jockey is, or I don't know yet who it is. I've got Flavian Pratt, but he's going to be on Angel of Empire. And that's why we put an asterisk by it. Spendthrift Farm, they want a Derby winner. Any horse who's remotely eligible is going to be in the Derby. That's how bad they want it. So not surprised there. Todd Pletcher, again, great trainer. Nothing, he knows how to do it. So the connections are all there. He gets a B+ basically because we just don't really know how good he is at this point because of that screwy Louisiana Derby. But is this a distance that he should be able to handle? Yes, and for that reason, he qualifies. Mage is by Good Magic, and he's got Big Brown underneath. So the connect, that's not going to be an issue for this one. I think a mile and a quarter he should be able to get. The only worry I have is the foundation, the fact that he's only got 3 starts. We remember what happened with Tampa last year. It was just a little early. This one has clearly shown some progression. He's obviously got talent. Gustavo Delgado horses tend to get better as they race more. So there's some good things to think about. And this one's an April foal, so he just turned 3. So he gets a B+. I think he's shown talent-wise. I think he belongs. I think the distance is probably something he can handle. Just worried about the foundation a little bit. Verifying is another one. He's a May foal. He hasn't even turned 3 yet, and he's been performing at the level he has. You got to like that. He's by Justify and Repent, who was sired by Louis Quatorze, who won the Preakness for Nixito. Excuse me. And Justify, as we're finding out, the longer we get, we see more his get. That the mile and a quarter might be a little far for them. Scat Daddy was more of a miler type. He was by Johannesburg. Johannesburg won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and was everybody's choice to win the Derby, except for one thing. He finished 8th because he couldn't get the distance. So when Scat Daddy ran in the Derby, I threw him out right away because he couldn't get it, and he didn't. So that is, now you can always breed stamina into horses like this, and so it doesn't mean necessarily you totally disqualify this horse because of Justified. Not at this point anyway. However, it is something you want to keep in the back of your mind, and when you consider the Bluegrass Stakes where Verified looked like he was all out, then it might give you a little bit of a pause. He is a half to Midnight Bisou, who's a great filly. We look at the connections, Magnier and Tabor. They're first-class outfit in Europe, and they've been in the States for years. Uncle Mo, Stay Thirsty, or not, no, I'm sorry, what am I saying? Thunder Gulch was their Derby winner in 1995. They've had a lot of great horses, and their silks are really blue and orange. They can't miss them. Brad Cox, what can you say? Great trainer. And Tyler Gaffalione in the irons. I mean, that's about an A-level connections as you get. The only question I got a little bit is the distance. That's the only question. Other than that, I think this horse qualifies. Disarm has got Gun Runner on top and Tap It on the bottom. Done. He's in. He qualifies. That's two-turn pedigree all day long. He's half to a stakes winner, Tap Daddy. Winchell Thoroughbreds, Steve Asmussen, Jose Ortiz. A-level connections. This one is the only thing I'm worried about. This one is the lack of foundation because they've been rushing him along a little bit. But I think the distance isn't going to be an issue, as witnessed by the Louisiana Derby. So I think there's good things to expect ahead with this one. So yeah, he qualifies. Reincarnate, really, his pedigree says that, good magic on top, okay. Scat Daddy worried a little bit about that underneath. All accounts are that this horse can run all day. So I'm going to go by the accounts, and I'm not going to worry too much about the pedigree. He is an April foal, so he's still growing. I just wonder about whether he's good enough to run with these horses. He just hasn't put it all together yet, and he's been kind of marginal. And that's why he gets a B-. I mean, I think his pedigree is okay, and his performance has been okay, tending towards mediocre. And just keep waiting for him to put it all together, and he hasn't yet. Maybe it's because it's in April fall. I don't know, but he gets a B- for me, and he's marginal for this field. Rocket Can, Into Mischief and Tap It. That's 2 turns all day. We don't worry about that. The average winning distance is Into Mischief. Sometimes it's an issue. Not most of the time, but sometimes. But he's got plenty of stamina underneath. So the 1.25 miles, I think he'll be okay with. I'm just not sure class-wise that he is qualified amongst the better 3-year-olds in this race. I think the Arkansas Derby kind of showed that he perhaps has hit the wall with that in mind. I know some of you guys feel otherwise, but I really think that this one's just a cut below. And that's... he's done enough to get in the race. That's true. And he has been pretty prominent in the Derby preps. But I think that last race looked to me like he's kind of hit the wall. Lord Miles as Kerwin and Majestic Warrior underneath. For those of you who don't know, Majestic Warrior has about as regal a pedigree as you could get. But he was a sprint closer. He screamed 2 turns, and yet he just couldn't get past being a sprint closer. I don't know what it was, but he was a big horse, very rangy, and he did win the Hopeful at Saratoga, and but he just never blossomed past that. But plenty of class underneath. I don't think pedigree is an issue with this one at all. What I do worry about is that perhaps there is a little bit of me that thinks maybe the Wood Memorial was a freak. Because he's just been so marginal until then. But maybe he's also putting it all together at just the right time. Look at his female family. He's 1L. That's pretty classy. So there's a lot of potential here. Whether or not we're going to see it, you see the GSV. Now, granted, again, it's not a completely accurate number, but it's one of the highest in this group. So there's a lot of class here. And so the question will be whether or not he can put it all together, and that's why he gets a B-, just because of the prior form. But I think this one certainly fits in the field. Sun Thunder is, Into Mischief And Medaglia d'Oro, he should be fine. I haven't seen anything to tell me that this one won't get a mile and a quarter. So from that perspective, I think he's definitely one of the better in the field because distance isn't going to be a problem with this one. However, performance, maybe, because he seems to be flattening out. He seems to be a mild closer, needs a lot of pace to run to. Don't think he's going to get it this year. The Risen Star seemed to be more an example, probably the best example. You got the rail, he got some pace, he got second. But as we know, the pace is going to be probably not very hot in this race. So he gets a C+ because he's done pretty well. But I'm kind of on the fence with whether or not he's going to factor in this race. Continuar is by Drefong is by Gio Ponti. Gio Ponti was an extremely versatile horse. For those of you who don't remember him, he could run on turf, dirt, anything, and he was extremely versatile. King Kamehameha is one of the more foundation sires, I believe, over in Japan. And you look at those average winning distances, it's not going to be a problem. Problem is, sometimes when they breed these horses, if you get a lot of stamina on the top and you get a lot of stamina on the bottom, what you get is a one-paced grinder. And that's what Continuar is. If you guys remember, Drosselmeyer was that kind of horse. Didn't like him for the Derby, loved him for the Belmont because he could run all day and he could stay at one pace forever. And I think Continuar is kind of one of those. His value in the race would be he'll be able to just hang in there all the way, not really be a win candidate, but he could factor in the exotics. That last work he had gives him a C- to me because it looks like he just doesn't want to be here. It was pretty disappointing. So maybe he'll do better as he stays in the States a little longer. But right now, the fact that he was pretty far behind Dermo Senegaki in the UAE Derby, and I think stamina-wise he can get the mile and a quarter. Just not sure he's good enough. Raise Kane is another one by Violence. He's got Lemon Drop Kid underneath. Stamina's not going to be an issue. Shouldn't be. He's an April foal, so he's still some potential, still growing. I expect this one to be coming from behind, and he's got the right jockey, Joel Rosario, for that. This one did pretty well early in the year, but once he went around two turns, he really petered out and didn't do very well in the Bluegrass Stakes. So that's why I downgrade him to a C-. I'm not sure he belongs talent-wise in this field. Confidence Game has got good two-turn pedigree. He's got Bernardini underneath, and Eblu Assand is a half to Zenyatta. So there's some pretty good class there. On paper, he looks like everything should be fine for the Derby, but that Rebel Stakes looked like he was really completely maxed out at a mile and a 16th. He's training up to the Derby. There's a lot of things to be concerned about. From a class standpoint, I'm just not sure a mile and a quarter is what this one wants. He gets a C+, because he did win the Rebel Stakes. But class-wise, I'm pretty sure that this one's going to be up against it. Jason's Road is by Quality Road, who was a great racehorse, obviously, at a mile and an eighth. Couldn't get a mile and a quarter. And he was the favorite in the British Cup Classic, and I tossed him because I knew he couldn't get more than a mile and an eighth. He's got Silver Deputy underneath, so there's and that's for his family 1C, so it's a pretty classy female family. He is an April foal as well, and you see his GSV is rather high. I think it might be the highest in this group. So there's some class here for sure. One little concern about the distance, particularly when you see the average winning distance for the Dam Sire underneath. And we witnessed that in the Louisiana Derby. It looked like maybe he just didn't have enough to go get Kings Barnes, even though he rated behind him. So this one is, it gets a B-, probably ought to be more like a C or a C+ now that I think about it. So this one I think is borderline at best. Because of the loss of Wild on Ice, which was rather unfortunate, we've got Skinner drawing in. And if you look at his pedigree, Curlin and Malibu Moon, what can you say? That's 2 turns all day long. It's not going to be a problem for him to get a mile and a quarter, as I can see it. John Shreffs is an old school trainer, and he trains up to a goal. So he doesn't really care what happens on the way to the goal. So I don't think he was really, whether this horse won the San Felipe or the Santa Anita Derby wasn't a big deal as long as he progressed. And I think he did. And I think Skinner's got. I think when he gets out of California, he might surprise as far as what he can do. I think the mile and a quarter is going to be fine for this one, and I think he's got more to offer. So he gets a B+ because I see him progressing, and his pedigree definitely says 2 turns all day. So I think Skinner qualifies. So we look at our class evaluation results, and this is basically what we've assessed from evaluating each of the contenders on class. So the definites are ones that you should absolutely consider using, and they belong in this race without question, in my opinion. Forte, Angel of Empire, Tampa Trice, Dermo Sotogaki, Hit Show, King's Bards, Mage, and Disarm. They're going to get the mile and a quarter, and they belong in the race. Possibles are ones that I'm kind of on the fence with, and you can sort of mix and match depending upon how you feel about them. Practical Move, mainly because of the distance questions. 2 fills, same thing. Verifying, pretty much the same thing. Reincarnate, not so much the distance as the class. Lord Miles, because the progression has been a little slow, and I'm not sure. I think he's going to take another step forward, but let's see how he trains. Sunbender, I'm just not sure he's... he may be a cut below these here. And Skinner, because it's still a little early, he probably is more of a definite than a possible. But I just have a little bit of question about him because he was running in California mainly. And the tosses are Rocket Can, Raise Cane, Confidence Game, Continue R, and Jace's Road. Based upon what they did at the Derby level, I'm not sure they're at the mile and a quarter class. More Rocket Can, more so. I just think competitive levels, I'm not sure he's at the class to follow this field. So that's what it looks like to me from class. So we're halfway there to getting our field of uses for the Derby, and as we can see, some of them are going to be strong in some areas, not so strong in others, but we want to focus on the ones that check all the boxes that we want to use for our wagering. I hope this is helping you out to getting a little closer to determining your own Derby selections. And, if you have any suggestions along those lines, please feel free to drop them by. I'm more than willing to listen. And if you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe. And we'll have part 3 at speed and part 4 pace coming along very shortly. And then we'll wrap it all up and get down to our final field of uses for the Derby and our win candidates. So I'll be talking to you soon. And until then, be well.